Okay, thanks, Georgia. We're back online and live, so welcome back to anybody who is watching online. I'm not sure whether Linda is still with us. Are you there, Linda? Okay, she might pop in. Okay, so welcome again to staff. We have Alan here from the news, and we're going to be talking this afternoon about the long-term plan, setting the scene. And at the table we have Jess. Welcome, Jess. So this is first time sort of in this new role. So welcome for that. And we have Leslie back from a little time in Australia. I understand, Leslie. So welcome home. Okay, so Simon, do you like to say anything to start off with?
No, other than to say this is the first initial briefing workshop we've had with you, and I guess it's putting the scene and just emphasise this is your plan, this is your 10-year aspirations, obviously notwithstanding all the other stuff that's going on and the things we just talked about. And trying to do a 10-year plan is a challenge enough with all the normal moving parts, but we obviously have so many now. It will need a whole lot of iterations as we go. So this is Jess's first sort of presentation on this in a new role. So be kind and gentle. Yeah, and looking forward to the conversation with you as we go forward.
Great, thanks, Jess. And Jess, would you like to take questions as we go? How would you like to handle that?
No questions as we go, it's fine.
Okay, that's great. Over to you guys.
Thank you. So yeah, as Mr. Pickford said, this is my first one, so please bear with me. So we'll go through it. How I thought today might go is if I just give a bit of a brief for those that haven't been to a LTP before, you know, what it is and how it links into the other council statutory activities around annual plans and annual reports. I also have put some slides in there around the 1st of July, because the 1st of July next year is when effectively this will kick off, and it's going to be a different place to what we are in today. So there's a lot of slides in there that I can't talk too much around, especially assumptions, for example, and they're going to have to play out over the next few months. And then what I've done is I've allowed time for us at the end to, if you're interested, work through a combined vision and some priorities that will help the staff refine their thinking as we're going through this process. So first of all, what is a long-term plan? So this is a 10-year document that's a strategic plan for the council's activities and the needs of the communities, aligning that with the community outcomes that we've already got in place. The idea of it is to develop it in consultation with the public. I haven't got the exact details of how we'll do that. It's something I'd be interested in your feedback in today, what you'd like to see us do, and then I can take that back to the engagement team and we can work through how that will work in the nuts and bolts. And yeah, so it's a 10-year strategy, but ultimately it really focuses on the first 3 years in the immediate future. So this is a document that just sort of paints a bit of a picture how it all works into the planning cycle. So the long-term plan is the 10-year document that gets revised every 3 years. The 2 years in between is the annual plan. And so that's particularly around any variances to the long-term plan that we can identify. And then every year we do the report. So the report's really around measuring what we've said we're going to do and have we actually done it. What my thoughts are around this particular LTP process was we've got this session today to work through some early thoughts with you. In September, I'll be working with Leslie and Sahana and the finance team around a financial strategy. So the workshop in September is probably going to be reasonably in depth. We won't have the financial strategy. This is the opportunity to discuss what we will be putting into the financial strategy in September. Then we can take that away, and I thought October would then be the better place, using that information to really work through the infrastructure strategy with yourselves. We can also discuss consultation topics that the team have identified, and then start looking at the performance measures, fees and charges, budgets, and rates, and then putting it all together probably in January next year. From there, we've got the audit. The audit really starts in December and then carries through until February. And yes, February. And then we'll be looking for a consultation period should we need any consultation in March to April. In May, we'd look to do hearings and deliberations for the 30th of June adoption. So it's quite a jam-packed start of the year. No, sorry, end of this calendar year, start of the financial year over the next few months. In terms of your role as elected members, so this is really your. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think, am I right in understanding questions as we go? So, question in regard to the September, the financial strategy. If we were to decide that we wanted to have a review of the way we rate our community, would that be the financial strategy? So that would be a topic for September's meeting.
We've committed to do a rate review once we remove all the waters, but it doesn't make a financial strategy. Financial strategy are things such as how we fund the organisation, such as capital costs or operating costs, and how we decide on things such as, is it a user pays? So that we want to focus more on user pays and charges. So the rates, that's given. But as far as the rating review is concerned, that's going to take place, but it doesn't actually come within the strategy.
So for complete clarity, at what part of the process would we introduce the concept of a revised rating process?
So December with the budgets and the rates, we've got something penciled in there. So that's budgets and rates, and we're hoping at that point, once we can come back with some scenarios to you regarding what those rates, that rate review might look like.
Can I just comment further? Because I think with all the things we just talked about with Head Start, if we're in a Head Start, not in a Head Start proposal by then if there is going to be a unitary on the coast, that changes the dynamic again. So it is, yeah. So, and it's difficult at this point to say we can do a rating review. Then I'm just cautioning councillor that there will be a whole lot of moving parts to this, and we can't recommit to a rates review until we know the outcome of whether we're part of this Head Start proposal. If we know not.
So sorry, but I have a different view. As an elected member, I would have thought that we would try at least to align our rating process with our neighbours in the event that such a thing does actually happen.
I guess picking up on that, that was the conversation I guess we just had.
Yeah.
So that, you know, we have the ability, you know, both politically and commercially or from BDC to be able to have those sorts of discussions. And, you know, quite now, because of that complication with fast track, I don't feel that we have. But then also we've got, you know, the new water coming up as well. And, you know, at some point, that new entity are going to get their head around what their charges are going to be and what the rates associated with that. And that's going to flow in, isn't it? And that might be, I don't know, early 27, or we'll get an indication maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, the charges we don't have input into as far as the water is concerned. But yes, that will have an impact on affordability, which includes the rates. So that's something we have to consider.
But there will be, I guess where I'm coming from is that once we know what Coast Waters rates or charges are going to be for, or rates or whatever, that's going to have an impact on what our normal rates are. So they're going to come along and have an input, and we're going to back all of that stuff out that we would otherwise charge for.
Well, we won't have that. If we won't actually complete this plan, including the waters. This will be done out with the waters out.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Okay, Simon, I interrupted you, sorry.
No, I finished. I think, I mean, and to Phil's point, I think it's there will be a significant transition. If we do end up as a unitary on the coast, there'll be a significant transition. So I think there'll be a whole lot of things in terms of aligning things such as rating systems, whether we want just do it as part of this process at this point. We can't commit, I don't think, at this stage to either doing a full rate review or not until we know what the outcome of Head Start
Yeah, I
is and
don't
what the
think we
timeline
can.
will be.
I don't think we'll know
No,
what that's going to be until after we've got past this point.
Yeah.
I think, you know, what we're being told by Tatura and I guess others is that we just continue as normal with this process because we don't know what the outcome is going to look like.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. We've got Shane and Dave and then Ray.
So in discussions around reform with particularly Mayor Lash from Westland, there was a discussion around aligning rates, but there is no way that they are going to, they may be looking at it this first year coming up, but I doubt that they will be. And so there is no point us spending a lot of money because there is a lot of money that needs to be spent on a rating review. We did talk around maybe looking at some of the differentials, and I think that's something that we should be doing is looking at the differentials. But we would be absolutely jumping the gun to do a full rating review this year. But somewhere in the long-term plan, we need to have it built in that it will need to be done because there is no doubt about it that somewhere in the next 10 years, and it will have to align with what's happening with whatever reform we see. And so it just needs to be built in at some stage, a budget for a rating review. But there is no point us spending money before we know what we have to look at. And maybe we're better off to let, if we're going to be pulled into something, let our neighbours spend the money on a rating review. And then if we have to align with it, then we have to align with it. But for me, it's the differentials. And I think that that's something that we could do is try and decrease some of the differentials.
Yeah, and that's the rates review that we'd actually committed to and discussed previously. So that's what we will be looking to carry out. It's not until it even, you know, Head Start or whatever we get pulled into, it's not until the detailed phase of that we will know what we need to do with rates. So we can't actually do much with that. But yeah, we committed to council that we would look at those differentials, and those are the rates reviews that we're talking about.
Thanks, Leslie. Dave.
So when we normally do strategy, there's something you have at the start, which is a unified vision, which I'm glad to see we're going to address that. And then when considering it, we've got to consider the worst case and the best case options, you know. What was the worst that could happen and what's the best that could happen? Well, clearly in this regards, the worst that could happen in my mind is that we lose control of our decisions to do with rating, and we cede that to central government and Grey and Westland. That's the worst that could happen, in my mind. The best that could happen is we retain control and influence of those, even going into the government reform. So, in that basis, that we don't know where the worst case or best case is going to be the end result, I think at this stage, all we can do is really come up with broad principles at the strategic level only. We can't get into the detail, because if we do detailed work, we'll get defeated by a decision that is beyond our control. So I would advocate that we keep it broad, we focus on the principles and strategies only, and with the exception of, I agree with the Deputy Mayor, that we have a look at the differentials. Maybe that's something we can do that's within our immediate control. Yeah. I think rating review work would be too early and be done without that sort of thing. So,
And just picking up on a point you made there too, Dave, you recall I put something out a few months ago, sort of explaining sort of how the coal industry export worked, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't been through a long-term planning process before, so I don't know what, you know, how you go about that necessarily. But what Dave's talking about is stress testing. You know, when Dave said, what's the best thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that could happen? Well, it all comes down to scenario analysis. And instead of just focusing on one thing, you know, what happens if Stockton closes? What happens if the Buller Bridge falls over or whatever? You know, so it's understanding, you know, what the worst case, what the best case, and what comes in between. So is that taken into consideration during that process in any way?
You know, we can look at things like that, but to be fair, the financial strategy is fairly well set by
What's
the act
already there?
as what we can do and what we do include. So we have to make sure that we follow the statutory inputs. But yeah, there can be other inputs as well, such as looking at things like that.
You'd certainly need a robust software
Yeah.
package to do all of that too, I imagine.
That would be good. But on councillor Hinson's point, we almost really have lost control of rates anyway because of rates capping. You know, so that's going to happen regardless. So that is something we do have to look at, and that's beyond our control.
That's a good point. Ray, and then Paul.
Look, I just think we've stumbled into a really significant fundamental discussion, which we do have to have. But in terms of what we're doing right now, I suggest that we give Jess the opportunity, probably without questions, actually, to just work her way through the proposals, see the whole thing, and then figure out how we deal with some of these huge issues. By the way, the rates capping thing, no, I'm not even going to go there.
Okay. Okay, back to Jess and Leslie.
Thank you. So the slide here is just around the role of you as elected members in this. So this again, something Mr. Pickford said, this is your plan, and it should reflect the community needs. So this is really an opportunity for you guys to, and this is where today is for me very important. You know, having priorities just really helps the staff actually focus in on what we're trying to achieve. And so it also helps with managing performance, and then that flows into annual reports and all that kind of thing. So it's quite an important day for me. So this was the framework that I had drafted around today. So this was what I put this in place for, was again for that decision making later on in the year. So my thoughts were around if we could agree on a vision today of why we're trying to do what we're doing. The community outcomes are already set from previous plans. I hadn't proposed any revisiting of them, but you know, open for discussion. And so for me, the community outcomes were sort of those goals for each of the, you know, social and affordability. So they were a bit of a larger, higher level goal. The priorities, the difference between that and the priorities was really around the fact that, like I say, this is, while it's a 10-year document, it's a focus for the next 3 years. And so the idea behind agreeing on some priorities was just to help really narrow that down for us. And so that's from especially yourselves and the community about what you want to address during this term. The community, the tools then that we have in place is this long-term plan, and it is your infrastructure strategy and your finance strategy. And then of course that gives under the CE staff the mandate to go about the work to achieve that. These are the community outcomes that are currently in the long-term plan. Open for conversation. I just, you know, I hadn't put it on the schedule for revision, but happy for the conversation.
That's right. What's that, sorry, Shane?
Sorry, that was just the opinion of one councillor. I want to ask a question now.
Jess. Oh, that's a good point. Thank you.
Jess, just given the current environment that our community are in, I feel like that the very first one needs to have that our communities feel informed, because there is so much reform happening right now. It needs to be part of that first statement. And I think and where we say connected, I think it needs to be, they need to feel informed and connected to council and council stakeholders. Because what we are seeing right now is that it's not just us who have influence over our community, it's going to change. And so I kind of would like to see that very first statement reflect that.
Thanks, Shane. And picking up on Shane's prior point, sorry, Paul, I didn't give you your opportunity. You're already on the list. You wanted to say something.
Oh, it was just when the term rates capping was brought up. We've heard this term, but I think we need to be all briefed on the extent of it, and how it will be applied and how we can work around it. My first opinion of it is that it can be applied invariably. So some briefing to councillors on how council staff feel that.
I just excuse me, tongue in cheek, but does government know? Has that been rolled out in any specific way?
Yes, talked about.
So,
It doesn't cap everything, I know, so we probably, you don't want to cover that here, but I think we need some sort of explanation of the extent of rate capping.
so at the moment, what I know is that, it will be coming, but the legislation won't change till 2029. What they're going to start from the 1st of July next year is monitoring, and it's going to start a transition period.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we don't have a 2%, 3%, 4%, 6%. We don't have that. They've indicated between 2 and 4%. And so we still have yet to hear, which is why then December in that workshop around budgets and rates, and I've put it at that end of the year instead, with the indication that ideally we'll have some further information then, and we'll just have to see what comes up. Otherwise, we might have to make some assumptions.
Yeah, well, that information on the timeline's helpful. Thank you.
So initially, when the minister came out and talked about it, there was some suggestion that they were going to have it in by Christmas, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And so you're now saying 2029.
So that's the legislation, but the transition, I think, was likely to be started. The intent was to start a transition under MCERT from 1st of July next year. And so that will be, monitoring will be guidance around it, but the legislation just won't kick in for 2 years after that.
Thanks, got Dave Forth, then Dave Hingston.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a 10-minute discussion around a question that was raised by Councillor Rutherford, which was legitimate. He was asking about the discussion in September and whether it would be expanded out to cover how we were going to meet any of those changes, which was through rating, and whether that would then need to have some sort of review about how we rated. And that's a legitimate question, because if we're going to look at what is the point of the question, why I asked the question was that we were going to talk about the economics, and that was going to be about whether user pays versus rating. So in other words, it was going to affect rating, because if we decided to put it back to rating at that discussion, then it would have implications back into the rating system. So there was a reason why I asked the question. I'm making vast leaps of judgment here, Phil, but for me, that made obvious sense that it was part of the discussion. So, but anyway, what I just wanted to say briefly is that here we are now back into discussing what government may or may not be planning for the next iteration of the torture chamber. And that to me is not the way to do a long-term plan. Our community is now facing uncertainty in the future around how that governance is going to look. What they shouldn't face uncertainty around is what their ideal council operation for their district looks like, what they want to see included and what they'd like to see removed from what we currently do. That's the idea of a long-term plan. That's the whole function of it. And that's what I'd like to see us just focus on, is actually doing a decent job on behalf of our community, so that we end up with that knowledge and we make those decisions from that information.
Thanks, Dave. We've got Councillor Hingston and then Tony.
Yeah, great, thanks. Firstly, I agree with what's been going on. I just have a question about the legislation of the rates cap. Is that policy, and is that agreed legislation signed off, or is it just a proposal stage?
They'd be looking to amend the current rating act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they're government, if they're the next government, or is it, you know?
So they're aiming to put this through as part of the system improvement bill, which would then amend the rating act, and
So
then we'd have a lot more
do it.
clarity. So it's not there yet.
So it's not there yet.
And it's not. So we don't know. And as Councillor Reynolds said, there's been lots of discussion, but actually very little clarity about what it will actually mean. And I think, all the things that Jess has talked about are just,
So there's a lot of water to go.
there is a lot of water to go into the bridge. And I think, rates capping is something to keep in mind, but it's unsure at the moment. So yeah.
The follow on from that is that what we should be looking at, as I said before, is broad principles and strategies. And I think the best approach, I'm hearing a lot of questions, is we take what we've got as a long-term plan and we agree sort of in principle what's good about it and what's not good about it, and then acknowledge that we can't go into a deep dive in some of these silos, like ratings, like affordability and all that sort of thing, because there's just too many variables. But there's some good stuff in the long-term plan as it is. So I would hope as a general principle that we use that as a basis for going forward and amend it, rather than go through a whole greenfields approach and trying to do it from the ground up. There's some good stuff in there. We just need to agree in principle what's good and agree in principle what we need to change going forward and what we should review in the process, because I know this is going to be a process over the next year.
Thanks, Dave. Tony?
Cool. Thanks, Shane, for doing some good input around our outcomes. Are we going to work through the outcomes and read them out so everyone can have a think about it, and if we need to add any more or change, or we're happy with it?
I was going to ask the same thing. So I mean, my first question had been, would you like to review them? And so if you do, I mean, I hadn't planned on doing it today. What I could do is maybe look at doing it once we've got the priorities today. We could look at scheduling another workshop if you'd like time to consider it beforehand.
Would it be easier, Jess, for if people have ideas to just flick them through and then you to develop an outcome that we just then review, rather than having a whole workshop around it?
That would be fine.
Because
So
I think
what I could do is I could then bring a decision paper to council, possibly just to get that confirmed through the council table.
Perfect.
Councillor Hawes?
Yeah, look, I just want to remind folks that we all probably know this, but it's for our clarity again. The long-term plan's a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
This is the third year of a third-year review of that long-term plan. So theoretically, if nothing changed, there's a chance to review everything, yes.
Yeah.
But if nothing changes, it's just adding the last 3 years that are missing. We've already gone through it onto the end of the 7 years that remain. And then also readjusting everything through that back based on the feedback from your community about where they want to go. That's simple terms. That's what a long-term plan is.
So what was that, Dave?
You add clarity or detail to the next 3 years.
So I think,
Absolutely.
going back to something, Councillor Henderson said, as newbies when we first came in, you've got a 10-year plan here. So, let's say one of us has this, outstanding suggestion, we'll call it. The way it sort of works, how do we actually feed that into something like a 10-year long-term plan?
That's where the workshops really come through. So the intent of them is to get your involvement in it. And so I think that would be the best one. If there was a specific topic, I think that's where the consultation topics one would be probably the first point to bring it to.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, back to you guys.
Okay, so I will send a document out to get feedback and then bring it to a council paper for a decision for the community outcomes.
Sorry. Yeah, just, look, can you include that ideas for how we actually ensure that the outcomes can be delivered? I really like Deputy's comment around, the community need to be, what did you add in there? Informed, was it? Yeah. So one of the issues we've had, and I think we all acknowledge this, was engagement with the community. We try and inform them, we try and get them to feedback from that information, but it's so difficult. Real examples with this bloody angst we've been through with the Head Start thing, such a low response. Traditionally for our LTP, low responses. What are the tools we can use to achieve Deputy's very correct addition to the outcomes? How can we guarantee, or not, I know you can't guarantee it, but how can we strengthen up the opportunities for our community to be both informed and provide feedback to us? I think it's one area where we've been very poor, and I don't blame anyone. It's just the environment, and it's very difficult sometimes to engage the community, but it's an area that I believe we really need to work on. And as an example, we talked earlier about next steps. Wouldn't it be nice to know what our community think about the way we voted at the table week ago. Wouldn't it be great if we had some real way to get that information back to help guide us on our way forward, not just for that decision, but all of our decisions that we make in the state.
I think picking up on that, Phil, the word to, I think the word is probably better motivated. I think the community is provided with a lot of opportunities to engage with us through these planning sort of opportunities. But as we saw with the annual plan, we got, hardly any turnout. We got a bigger turnout at Reefs than what we did at Carramere, and a bigger one at Carramere than what we did in Westport. So to me, it's how do we motivate them to do it?
When I made that statement, that was actually more around some of our stakeholders. So Local Water Done Well, I would say there has been very little information sent out to our community. And so it is more about us pressuring those entities outside of us who are doing work that involves our community to be communicating with our community. So yes, it might come through us, but we need to be ensuring that information is coming to our community. So I hear what you're saying, Phil, about communication in general. I think that's always a challenge, and our team do the best that they can do, but I think we need to be lobbying for that external information from Local Water Done Well, because for me, there's a black hole deal with our community right now, and they're going to get walloped with a lot of.
Yeah, I think with that, Shane, is that the directors have been appointed. The latest on that is that sometime it looks like in August, they will look to appoint a CE. Those things will
It is our job, Chris, to make sure that there is information. Those of us who are on that committee need to make sure that we keep asking for information to be coming through to our community.
Yeah.
Same with whatever's happening in the reform space. If it is our staff that are liaising in some form and not us, then our community still needs to be kept informed. And if it's not by our staff, it should be by the other councils who are doing whatever they're doing. And so it is, I just feel like it's an important thing to be in there in the current environment.
Yeah, I agree. It's important. I believe that we have been doing quite a good job with what we've had to work with to date. But, it's something that we've got to keep focusing on and get better at, isn't it? Where did we get to? We're going to Councillor Hingston and then to Paul.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on something that Phil said and Shane reinforced, is that when we review this, we should be looking at change and consistency. So what's changed since we put this last long-term plan out, and what has been consistent? And I think if I could use the term, we're suffering from reform fatigue or change fatigue, if you like. There's so much change going on. I don't know about the community, I suspect it so, and maybe the other councillors. I'm getting fatigued by all the change that's going on. Local Water Done Well, reforming government, and rates reviews and all that sort of thing. And there's only, I'll be the first to admit, there's only so much bandwidth I can deal with before I get overloaded. And I think that's part of the problem, is some or a majority of our community are getting overloaded with change and proposals, and it's a lot to take in. So the way we can break down that information and we can deliver it to our communities, we should all be looking for ideas and initiatives to do that. And we just go back to change and consistency. So all we really can do is say, we agree with these consistent things. These are all things we want. Government, community engagement, all that sort of thing, and rates reviews and reduction in expenditure and increase in income. And then we look at what's changed and we try and communicate that in a better way. So, I come back, if we can look at this through the things of what we want to change and we want to keep consistent, then it'll help us focus our efforts. And I think community engagement is an important one. Yeah.
Paul?
Communication, consultation is important. And I've engaged many hundreds of people and had them put in a consultation paper, but the majority opinion is you're wasting your time. They don't listen to you. They do whatever they want anyway. So we've got to learn to start treating ratepayer consultations with respect. And they are, and they have been generally ignored in most cases. which is why we have such a small number. It needs to change, and we need to adapt to doing what the ratepayer wants. The general ratepayer, I never spoke to one that wanted to see our water resources signed off into a combined council organisation, whether we felt pressured to hear or not. I haven't heard one ratepayer that wants an amalgamated council. So if we listen to our ratepayers, we get them on side, and they will give us their opinion. But at the moment, they're inclined to not communicate because they feel they're just going to be ignored anyway.
Thanks, Paul.
Sorry, it's not just the ratepayer. Can you use your mic, please? Sorry, it's not just the ratepayers, it's the residents. Yeah, and I accept that. Absolutely agree. You know, whatever initiatives we can come up with, great, let's go for it. Let's identify them and go for it.
You've got an energetic council table today, Jess. Dave Falls, and then we'll give it back to Jess.
Well, I just wanted to point out that there might be some validity in that statement by Councillor Reynolds, but the counter statement to that is that we don't have determination over a large chunk of what we deliver. It's legislated. We as councillors live in a highly legislated environment that sets down a set of rules that we have to operate within, things that we have to deliver and how we deliver them. And therefore, yes, there's some truth in that. You can talk all you like about what you want us to do, but there's a large chunk that we can't do by law, and there's a large chunk that we can't do by other various forms of controls. So you might think that you want to wipe out rates as the bottom line. Let's not pay any rates. That's what we, all the ratepayers in the Buller, want. You can't do it because we have to deliver safe drinking water, all of the rest of it by legislation. There's a whole set of rules around what we do and what we don't do. And that's the first message. If you want to get engagement, the only times that I've seen large scale engagement here is when there's change that raises the absolute red flags and hackles amongst people, and then they want to come along and be engaged. So throw a straw man into the mix. We're going to double your rates in this next. Speak to that, folks. Come along, and then you'll get engagement. You'll get everyone in the district come along to you and put a submission into your long-term plan.
Potentially, well,
Back to Jess.
So this slide is a very, very simplified key date slide for the next 3 years. I actually started it from July this year. What I wanted to show is that in the next month, we're looking at getting the systems improvement bill enacted. So that's quite a large one. That will possibly have MCERT dictate what the new performance measures are that council work under. Rates Act might fall out of it, and also a standardised code of conduct for elected members. We're working through, we've got the national elections, of course, and we're working through the Coast Waters transition. That's taking up quite a bit of time at the moment, and we're learning as we go, of course, as they learn and they start developing it. The other one is the building systems reform that will come through over the next few months as well, that Simon's looking forward to. So then that's all happening while we're doing the work over the next few months. So then on the 1st of July, like we've talked about, Coast Waters is live, so water won't be part of our business. So when we're looking at this long-term plan, we're not factoring that in. We will see what simplifying local government legislation, what they're thinking about, I believe, is sort of late 27, early 28. You know, so by that point, we're starting to maybe get a feel for what that's coming through. And rates capping, the transition and the monitoring of the rates capping will start. At the same time, we've got regional spatial planning that will be underway, and we're looking to have them notified in about September 28. So that's a huge piece of work that Simon will be involved in as well, coming up to the local government elections. So it's very simplified. There's a lot of things in between all of that, but it was going to get to be quite a big timeline. So I thought I'd just try and keep it with the key dates. So yeah, the 1st of July. So, I mean, we've sort of talked about it now. So yeah, Coast Waters Limited is live, simplifying local government's well underway, rates capping and building reform. I did want to talk a bit about Coast Waters though. So, in the previous years, water has been council under council's oversight, and that's been delivered through the infrastructure strategy. And so the process there is that the infrastructure strategy would be developed, would be signed off, you'd identify key projects, do consultations on your big projects, and the approval would sit through the LTP process. With Coast Waters, the territorial authority is still responsible for water. So even though we're discharging our duty of care, we still need to understand and have assurance as to what they're doing. So their version of the infrastructure strategy is what's called a water services strategy. So similar thing, identify key projects and work with the community on what their needs are. I think the key one there is this is the first one we've done. And so what we're trying to learn is what the integration between the infrastructure strategy and the water services strategy will look like, so that as the shareholders representatives, the councillors understand that there has been that process followed. There's a bit to go on there. The Coast Waters themselves are doing the water services strategy, and our team are doing the infrastructure strategy, and the two are needing to talk to each other.
Shane.
Just a question around that, Jess, that we have to have an understanding of the strategy and know that it is suitable for our community and that we're covered by all the legislation. Is that what you're saying? So going forward? I printed out the legislation. So it's the territorial authority must ensure that the other party performs and exercises all regulatory requirements. So do we then have to, because this really confuses me, do we then have to retain some level of expertise in our staff? Because how do we know that is happening if we don't have that level of expertise that our staff have transitioned?
So I think there will need to be, there'll still need to be an engineering team. So that will come through. At the moment, what I've been talking with Brent about is having a short chapter in the infrastructure strategy, so that just provides that assurance that there has been integration. But the regional spatial planning will also be a really interesting tool when that kicks off for the following LTP in 3 years' time.
Just to clarify, so ensuring we reach the regulatory statutory requirements is generally via a reporting process. So it'll be through the board and who will report back to council that they have met their statutory requirements, same as what we have to do in terms of resource consent, compliance, etc.
Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. How confident are we that we'll have sufficient information that we can build into our LTP, the stormwater component that is not going to be picked up by Coast Waters?
So they're working through that information at the moment. We have Teresa from Coast Waters is down in a couple of weeks, and so I don't have an answer for that today. The purpose of her coming down in 2 weeks is to really start going through this in a bit more detail. My intent, though, is the infrastructure strategy in October is where we can start fleshing that detail out with you. So we've talked about the community side of this, but really the stakeholders. So what this is the organisations, broad organisations, and also the community that we were looking at. So yeah, taking your points about the community. So thank you for that. So we'll work with the engagement team on what that looks like. But yeah, definitely working with our Tangata Whenua partners, Development West Coast. I've said government agencies because there's quite a variety of them. There's an alphabet, NZTA, MCERT, MFE. So the other one is council-controlled organisations, which of course Coast Waters will start falling into as well. So the LTP assumptions, so like I've mentioned, I think for the financial strategy, while we won't be able to lock a lot of these down immediately in September, this is where we can start really fleshing them out again. But some of the big ones is factoring in the rates capping transition, regional spatial planning costs. I've said economics, so by that I mean sort of the infometrics, you know, what does growth look like, what do rateable units look like, what does job economics look like, preferably no catastrophic events, and then also staff retention, so just how can we as an organisation retain our staff and really develop them.
Sorry, Jess,
Just
no catastrophic events, as an LTP assumption. I just have a feeling, in my water that that's not a good assumption to make. It would be my assumption that in the next 10 years, we're going to have some sort of catastrophic event of some description, more or less catastrophic, I mean. So would it be better to assume something other than that's not going to happen? Otherwise, we just disregard a level of resilience that we might otherwise need to pursue.
So when I say catastrophic events, I was more thinking around the funding model and that recovery costs would ideally be funded elsewhere. In terms of adaptability though, that's probably a different assumption around
I just have
what
a
does
problem assuming
natural
away
hazards and
something like
adaptability.
catastrophic events, that government's going to pay for it because, you know, as has been evidenced by the last series of catastrophic events, sometimes government comes to the party, sometimes they don't. They hardly ever come to the party with as much as we need to rectify the situation. So I'll just leave it with that.
Tony.
Right, so with all the stuff that's going on at the moment, we need to make a hell of a lot of assumptions. How is that going to sit with auditing when we've been warned time and time again that our assumptions are quite an issue?
Tricky.
Yeah.
I would say though that every organisation, every local government organisation is going to be in the same boat. And so I think the auditors are very, you know, aware of the situation that everyone's in.
Shane.
Guide us as well.
I guess for me, what's kind of like the monkey in the ring with this is West Coast Regional Council and the flood walls. Like we're talking about catastrophic events and economics, and like where does that fit in that cost to our community, and actually going forward, who is it even going to sit with, and who will control that? And I guess for me, it's I don't know, Phil, you might be able to inform us more of what is happening around the rates that our residents can expect in the next year or in the next 3 years is kind of something, the information that we've been asking for that we don't have, that needs to be part of this conversation. And actually as a stakeholder, I think regional council needs to be there simply because of those flood walls and the cost to our community. Just, yeah.
Yeah, good question, Shane. I don't think they'd even be able to answer that for you today. We are having a meeting next Wednesday, and I know that a number of people who aren't actually on the committee intend coming along and sitting in on it just to, you know, get what information can be gleaned from it. But I thought they will be disclosing some of their revised engineering and talking about already some potential shortfalls. And I guess one of the discussions will be how that's managed, dealt with. So
Thanks,
yeah.
Phil. That's good discussion. I'm really pleased that we've allocated until 10 o'clock at night to finish this session. Tony, and then Dave, did you have your hand up too, did you? Tony, you did.
I suppose really, you know, we have to just look at the LTP now, look at considerations and see if we need to zhuzh, finesse, change, alter. I mean, I know we can't, but I suppose we need to make it fit for purpose.
The ideal situation with an LTP, the way it's supposed to work is you are refreshing it.
Yes.
So you don't want to be rebuilding it every 3 years.
A living, working.
However, I think we're in a situation where there are so many things we have no information about. We don't know what's going to happen. It's going to come down to assumptions, really.
I'm just saying, yeah, that as far as the considerations go that are in here now, maybe we should be like, we can focus on that and see if we need to zhuzh them up or
The current assumptions
Yeah.
that are in there.
current considerations that are in here.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, that document has, I mean, I've already got notes scribbled all over it of things for this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Jess, back to you.
So one of the other big ones we've touched on this already is the simplifying, systems improvement bill. So like I said, that's likely to be enacted this month. So that refocuses the purpose of local government and it takes away the community, the four well-beings that are currently in legislation. So the other one that does is so MCERT will likely be putting out very specific performance measures that every council has to adhere to. So we haven't even started on looking at that, if they're going to change in a month's time, so we need to get that information once it's enacted and the MCERT get their head around what they want to do and send that out to us. So this is the current activities that we report under, and that's the new groups of activities. So, I mean, regulatory services doesn't look like it changes too much. Adaptation and emergency management are in there. As an example, the governance, planning and reporting does include the water services strategy, just as, there's further links between coast waters. The adaptation and emergency management activities in there. So that's looking at implementation of adaptation actions, flood protection, emergency management, climate related planning, drought and fire protection, that kind of thing. The community and recreation facilities are still your libraries, your theatres, swimming pools. And then there's this lovely one called Other.
Yeah, what is that?
So
That's
it's everything else.
That's
Yeah.
the biggest one, Tony.
So that's grants, community and economic development, events and festivals. So they're basically gone, if it's not what they define as core through the change in the legislation. So everything else is the core activities, and the other category is for the non-core activities.
Just a question, is where does spatial
I think that's under regulatory, would be under regulatory services, I would have heard. Yeah. Oh, right. Sorry, yeah, governance planning. Yeah.
So I think it will be.
District and regional plans. Yes, I this was the original list that people have gone back to feedback on. So this hasn't been finalised yet. This is just a draft. Yeah. So yeah, that's effectively my sort of summary of the background of where we're thinking. So yeah, if you're keen, then we could take a break if that works for you, and then we could come back and start bouncing some ideas around and what a vision and some priorities might look like. What I've given you is just some shorthand just to get thinking around how they might be framed, and what we would possibly be looking for from our end. So yeah, happy to discuss that with you. George is going to take some notes.
That's right. Yeah, we'll take a 10-minute break. We've got plenty of time for this session. 10 minutes. Let's say back at 2:15. Georgia, did we just stay online?
Yes.
We do. Okay. Okay, that's fine. So 2:15, and we'll resume the next phase. Thank you. live again. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Georgia. Okay, we're live and ready to go again. Jess, would you like to pick up? Over to Jess.
So this is what I just put down as a straw man. I mean, I just wanted to effectively give you guys something to think about. We don't have to use this even remotely, but I thought as a vision, something like Bulla is a thriving, secure, resilient district where communities, environment and economy are supported to prosper now and for future generations. Might be a nice goal to aspire to. So yeah, I mean, the floor's open. George is going to take notes. But basically, yeah, happy to debate it, tear it to shreds, start from scratch. I'm totally open.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like it. I think it's good. And I think the vision is there for now, you know, and in the future for our children and subsequent generations. I mean, I initially had one which was based on some of the work we'd done before, which was a great place to live, a great place to work, a great place to visit. But, you know, I think if people sort of take this vision of the baseline, it's got everything there. We want to be a, you know, thriving or prosperous, secure from disaster, or as resilient as we can be at least. The environment is great. The economy is great. We all want to get a balance there and to prosper now and for our future generations. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. The only issue I'd have, and I know I'm going to get some flack for this, but I'd take our district, but because I don't think the district is going to be here in 3 years' time. But you go.
Point of order.
Sorry? Yeah, no, I would just sort of.
I'm just joking, Dave.
Yeah, no, I get it. We need it, but you know, a community of communities. This is something that we can pass on to whichever government, local government body is in place after us.
Shane.
Jess, I just think it would be good to add where Bulla is a thriving, secure, resilient district where communities have a voice and communities, environment and economy are supported. Because if we have where communities have a voice, that then feeds into some of the discussions going forward. I just feel like it would be a good thing to put where our communities have a voice.
Yeah, it's good. Paul.
I dispute thriving. If we look along the main street and see the number of shops that are closed, we've had feedback from some that, well, there's a workshop run by the development and for prospective people selling their business, and there are a number there from Westport, and all had the same story that those wanting to buy it were put up for the cost of rates and compliance costs. And looking along the main street compared to what it was some years ago, not only the number of closed shops, it's also the number of service agencies that have taken over where there were commercial premises. So thriving, some aren't thriving, some are thriving. But not,
well, it's an aspiration, isn't it?
it's an aspiration. That's what we want, but it's not happening.
I think what Jess is saying to me, and that anyway, is that we recognise that the district has to thrive, and if it does, a lot of the problems you're talking about here, you know, should be dealt with in one way, shape, or form. But if we don't thrive, we'll continue to go backwards. So I think it's important to keep that in there, even to strengthen it. Phil.
Yeah, thanks. I totally agree with what just been said. I do question why we keep using the word resilient. You know, resilient district, we're resilient people, this is resilient. Really, what's you know, are we that resilient, and what is the gain from having that in this vision? Love everything else. Of course, we want thrive, secure. I think Deputy's point about communities have a voice, absolutely. But resilient, I believe it's well overused.
What do you think, Jess?
So my thought was around, it had multiple streams. So I was thinking resilience in the sense that when we're building new infrastructure, it's thought about from a long-term perspective. I mean, that's mostly design anyway, so that's probably reasonably nuts and bolts. But I was also thinking there, tourism, it sort of ebbs and flows, mining ebbs and flows, the economic, extractive industries in general, ebbs and flows. And so just around that base of as things are ebbing and flowing, and that's probably a reasonably philosophical life sort of theory, that we move with it was probably more where I was going with that word.
But not just, but the whole stuff.
It was very wide was where I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, and the other word that comes to mind, I'm not suggesting it should go in here, but with resilience comes adaptation. And I don't mean climate adaptation.
But you
I
mean
mean
the
the
same
ability
thing.
for people us to adapt, whether it be through business or personally or whatever, as things go, as you say, up and down. Dave Force.
Well, I think that it recognises that change is inevitable. You know, the old saying that there's nothing, more sure than death and taxes. Well, I'd remove taxes because that can change. It's a man-made concept, but death and change are the two things that will always happen. And unless you're able to be resilient through change, then you're going to have roadblocks crop up. So I hear what Phil's saying, but also adding to that our concern around, like food security and other things that happen within an area. There's a whole lot more to being resilient as a community than there is just, those few things that we deal with. So that, it's about trying to get a community that can see 100 years from now, it's still got a future.
So just thinking about that, so rather than use the word resilient, and we just talk about a whole lot of things that feed into that particular word, I don't have an alternative, but can we think about how we sort of, tease that out a little bit more?
So I just happen to have a thesaurus open because I thought this might happen. Not this particular word hadn't sprung to mind, but when you do this, because I did the same thing, I came up with words and went, hang on, I don't like this. Let's find a better one to suggest. So some synonyms are buoyant, strong, supple, tough, volatile, quick to recover. I mean, to be honest, I actually quite liked adaptable. I thought that might be a better word.
Yeah, Dave.
You probably could go, to live and visit, thriving and adaptive resilience, because that's what it's about. It's about changing, providing the resilience through adaptation and change. So something along those lines. Phil, you might be able to come up with something better, but that might not raise your hackle.
I like adaptive, I don't know about adaptive resilience.
Dave.
I'm happy with resilient. I'm happy with adaptive, but I'm thinking in terms of messaging is your average person going to really understand what adaptive resilience is? I'm not trying to dumb it down.
No, I understand. It's a bit like the word affordable in a way as well. There's different things.
Yeah,
for different
so,
people, isn't it?
I'm happy with resilient, I'm happy with adaptive resilience, but, or even adaptive, but just when we do it, and by the way, I'm happy with Shane's.
Yeah.
Amendments. But we just got to remember, this is our vision, that we want the whole of the Buller, or as many people as possible, to catch on and understand.
Well, that's the key thing to it, isn't it? Because whatever words you use, you've got to keep in mind the audience and whether you're getting the message across. So on that particular one, why don't we just leave it to Jess unless anybody's got anything else that I'd like to input. I mean, I think, Jess, you got from that discussion, a bit of a sense about where it might need to go.
Yes, but is there anybody else? Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm going to circle right back round, maybe something about fairness. I don't want us to lose track. I want to go back to that discussion that we had right back at the beginning and it is around fairness and equity. It's really important that we get to grips with this rates review. And I've heard comment around rates capping and the establishment of the local water CCO. But those things, to my mind, don't stop us from dealing with this real issue that we've got around the way that the rates load is apportioned in our community. And I know last week people were getting their new rates bills. We've said that rates across the community are going up by 6 or 7%. Well, I know lots of people whose rates have gone up by 14%. We've got a real issue. And I don't think that we can really move forward as a district until we deal with that issue. We've kicked the can down the road for years and years and years. Can we please put it in our timeline? When are we going to deal with this issue?
I would say, I think the better place to deal with that is through things like the financial strategy, and
Yeah.
then in December when we deal with it in more detail. Where I'd said the economy is supported, that was the type of thing I was thinking with that. Because for this particular statement, I don't think you can get into that level of detail, and I didn't want to be too limiting with that. But there is a priority in there around economic prosperity, so possibly when we get to that, maybe we could sort of discuss that.
Yeah, Dave Kingston. And then Rosalie.
Before on from Ray, I would really like to see a time in there that we look at that tweaking the differentials, and that would account for some of that. And it was mentioned December before, and I think if we can just set it in the calendar that we look in December to look at tweaking the differentials, lowering the number, and I believe that will be some way towards.
Definitely the differentials is the main part.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's why we've got to set a time.
Yeah,
Maybe-
the
maybe,
plan
yeah,
is to bring that
yeah.
back with some scenarios on it in December.
Dave. Oh, yeah, Dave and then Dave. Dave is Dave, yeah.
So, yeah, I understand the concern. There's a statement called ends, ways and means when doing strategic planning. What end do you want to achieve? What ways or work streams are you going to do to achieve them? And what resources are you going to apply, what means? But in a vision statement, you can't make it too fat, complicated, or bulky. Anything longer than a short, sharp sentence is risking being too confusing. So I agree with Ray and Rosalie that you've got to have these things there, but they are work streams that we should address. So we are going to have, we're going to support in a work stream fairness and equity. We're going to review the rates. We're going to review the differentials. All those are the work streams about how we're going to get it done. The vision statement should be as concise and to the point as you can make it.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Sorry, it was deviating from that, but it had nothing to do with that.
I understand. We're in violent agreement, Rosalie.
Phil. Oh, sorry, that was Dave and then Phil.
Yeah, sorry, I don't even know why we're on this topic, but literally sitting here already, we've had 3 different views on what we're talking about. And one was Phil talked about a rates review because he fundamentally believes that it needs a new structure. I would posit he may alter that view, but that's. And then Rosalie says that she wants to change differentials, and then Shane says she wants to reduce differentials. So on that one topic, we've already gone a vast distance apart, if you like. And I just want to throw my 2 cents into that, and that's how. And these differentials are how we've ended up with a structure that we can have a rate that we think is delivering a 6% increase to the district, and we're going to have people getting 20% in some places, and it has no relationship to affordability. That spread can happen, and the person getting that 20% rise can be the person that can least afford it. So let's be real, rates review is the only way that you're actually going to deal to those.
Okay, well, I think though that, Leslie has responded to that already. Leslie, do you want to respond to that again?
I don't think there's anything else to say. We've already said that we're going to come back in December with some scenarios with changes, and it will be to differentials. We're not going to change from land value to capital value this year or next year. So it will be within the differentials that we'll be looking.
Thanks, Leslie. Phil?
Yeah, look, all those things are true. I just want to go back to this vision. I don't see anything here about, Jesus, come to live in Westport because it's a great place to live. Bloody bring your family up. Secure environment, prosperous. What about Phil is a great place to bloody live. Shit here and run with your kids and basic language, some basic language about it's a great place. Buller is a great place, but that's why we're here. We all think it's a great place to live. We're not here because it's a resilient district. We're here because we want to live here. Well, somehow just cut it down to the basic, what it's really, you know. Oh,
But to be fair, Phil, I understand where you come from, but to be fair, you know, this is, we're dealing at a strategic level here. You know, we're not doing an advertising campaign to get people to live here. I understand where you're coming from, but, you know, you have to start somewhere. You know, you start at the top and then everything cascades down. And one of those things that cascade down will be what you're talking about. And, no? Yeah, Tony.
I don't know how you're gonna change the vision statement, because it's in relation to the long-term plan. So you need to, if you keywords in there that cover all of the documentation. I'm happy with the priorities. I think the ones I can see there. Are we at that point yet? Okay. Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, but what Phil said is right. It's sort of focusing on what we are. What did local people used to be? And it's what it is now. And I've noticed over the years too, we have people from outside the district that move here. They generally see something here that they equate with, which is why they blend in, because they end up with the same aspirations and targets for those that live next door to. And what we've got here is a society really where it doesn't matter what sort of organisations you go to, a city has heaps and they're all here in some small way. So if you've got kids that want to get involved in whatever, there's generally, it's catered for here. And the thing that makes our communities different is they're all rather self-supportive of each other. People know their neighbours, they know people down the street. And it's that I'm interpreting Phil was looking at, not grandiose words, but it's not to the vision of having that, is to maintain what we have, which is positive already. So the vision is to maintain our supportive culture, if you like, where we are friendly and we accept others.
Well,
Not, I see that as the continuous vision.
how can you change that?
Okay, but yeah, did you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I'm a colonel retired, so if you want to tell me to sit down and shut up, I'll take that advice. You know, I agree with Phil. I love that statement. However, I think something simpler, to the point, and if I can put it up there as an option, we can chat about it, you shoot it down. But a great, you know, Buller's a great place to live, work and visit now and into the future. Or maybe we could cut the extra part out, but you know, it's a great place to live, work and visit. And if you keep it short and punchy and to the point, then it's great. That said, I wouldn't be dying in a ditch if we had that. You know.
Deputy Mayor.
I think we need to be careful that we're not taking like I'm thinking promoting Bullers.
Yeah.
Saying that vision is informing our long-term plan, and the things in it around environment, economy, resilience, thriving are what informs the plan. And so those words in there, I don't think are an overplay. I think that those words inform what our focus is, what our priorities are. That's just my opinion.
We're talking about a vision for Buller. We're not talking about supporting a plan. All the stuff in there supports what we want to achieve in a vision. So you can have that there. How you get to being a great place to live, how you get to maintaining things, how you get to all that. I agree. It's like, it's not a bland statement. It's a vision statement.
I was going to suggest, I think that for Councillor Hingston's one, if we had that as a second option, I'd make the same comments around tweaking the first one If I'm coming back to you with the council paper around the community outcomes, I can add this to it, and so you're welcome to decide on it then. That might work. I think that for both of them, they can still inform the priorities if we wanted to carry on with the discussion and lead into them, because I think both of them still work.
I mean, terminology,
Yeah, Dave. Pause.
Yeah, I hear what Phil's saying, and I think that what Phil's correctly identified is why we live here. And the ultimate reason why most people live here is that sense of community. And so I think with a great sense of community should be part of the vision, because without that community around us, it's not the place we want to be. So really, if we run the risk of losing that sense of community, so I would say with a great sense of community, you know, that's part of our vision statement. So we maintain that focus. Maybe that covers off some of what you were talking about, Phil.
Yeah, as I say, if you're comfortable with moving on to the priorities, then I'll bring this back as a decision paper. Yeah. So the first one we put in there was keeping pace with reform, actively promoting Buller's interest within any reform processes. We then moved on to working within changing legislation. And this one had to be, that was a bit harder. So monitoring the changes currently underway and adapting as required, which I think is going to be the next 4 months effectively of my life. Then economic prosperity, focusing on enabling job creation, business growth, economic diversification and industry excellence. Councillor Curnow, I don't know if you'd like to put in something there around fairness and equity, around rates. Appropriate infrastructure, meeting community needs, operating effectively, delivers value for money and complies with legislative requirements. We thought a council controlled organisation priority would be worthwhile, especially as we're getting a new one coming under our banner. So that's they deliver high quality and efficient services that meet the community needs, council priorities and statutory requirements. And this one, regional collaboration. So strengthening the collaboration with West Coast councils and partners to support a thriving, resilient and sustainable regional future. So I think that one is, you know, something along the regional collaboration there we felt was reasonably important, particularly at this particular time.
I'd like to see, and I think I just mentioned it to you before, under economic prosperity, is developing a long-term economic development strategy as part of that. And I also wonder where finances is up there, because I would like to have something around having like very clear financial information or reporting, because I think finances need to be in there. And I'm not sure what the wording could be, Leslie, you might have an idea, but I just feel like, you know, appropriate infrastructure, but also appropriate financial reporting and accurate financial reporting is something that we've all talked about.
Yeah, financial visibility, just
What was the word you used there, Leslie? Financial
visibility.
Yeah, but it goes a wee bit more than that. In my view, it's, you know, you can say financial visibility, but you've got to have the tools to be able to provide that as well.
So
and that's,
I
I mean,
think this
that's
is where
like
though-
infrastructure as well.
Yeah, so that's where these are really important, because then that actually gives us the ability to sort of go back to our staff and say, well, do we have the right tools to achieve this? And if we don't, that's when we can put budget lines into the long-term plan to achieve it.
Yeah, that's right. Dave?
So just a question, yes, just remind us how the priorities are going to relate to our work streams for the next 3 years. These priorities will mean that we are making a commitment to address them in work streams within the next 3 years.
It's more around key focuses. And so that as we...
those are a bit woolly. What I'm asking is a specific question. If we put them in the priorities, to me, that says they are a priority to us. We're going to have work streams where we're going to consider all these things as a priority in the next 3 years.
So I don't think for the type of language I was looking at for the priorities, you could be putting them into work streams. The reverse is what I was trying to do, was around where we have new projects or something, that we would then link it back to the priority and say, we've suggested this and it meets this priority. And if it doesn't meet a priority, then it's something that we wouldn't be looking to do. So it was actually the reverse that I was trying to do with this.
Okay, I think that's a valid perspective from a staff perspective. I get it. from a council perspective, from a governance perspective, if I put that down there as my priority, that tells me as a councillor, as councillors, we are going to address that during our training. And we're going to work that as a priority. That's what it tells me.
I wasn't intending on them being fully addressed during their training. A lot of them will carry on for such a long period
Oh,
of
no,
time.
I get it. You're
So
not going to
adaptable,
solve all.
yeah,
the
so
world's
appropriate
problems,
infrastructure.
but
would
we
be-
deal with them as best we can as a priority in our work stream. So I would expect to see them coming up in our agendas as a priority, that we won't be getting other things of a lower priority taking precedence over these things that we want to deal with. Because we said this is the next 3 years in detail, and the next 10 years and the subsequent 7 years out to 10 years in a little more outline. I get it that it's going through the whole 10 years, but as a priority, we should be dealing with these things.
So what I was thinking for future workshops is that if we had these agreed on, then in the workshop, one of the first things we would do is regroup and make sure that we, just revise, just check in, make sure we're on the same page still. And then how those workshops would link back to these, the detail within them.
Okay.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, sort of. What I'm going to say though, is if I see something that comes up that's not a priority and we're not addressing these other priorities, I'm going to take council staff to task and say, why aren't we dealing with this as a priority?
Yeah, so the intent of that is to be able to say to council staff that this is what we're looking to do, and so that we can do that triaging beforehand. Yeah.
Thanks. Phil.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I'm not too sure why we've got priority 2 working with changing legislation. I think it's just business, BAU, in my view. I don't know.
Not the exact way to do it.
Yeah.
And I might have to give.
So that's my first comment. My second one is just in regional collaboration. I really strongly believe that it should strengthen collaboration with our region, with neighbouring councils. I don't think it should be specifically West Coast. Well, I'm including all neighbouring councils here. I believe we need to work collaboratively with.
You got a bit of land up in Tasman there, Phil.
Not yet, not yet, but after I talk to Nick and we bloody nail Tim down, maybe.
Shane.
I strongly believe that we should. I strongly believe we shouldn't restrict ourselves to West Coast councils when we're talking regional collaboration.
Simon,
Just one reflection on your comment, councillor, regarding legislation. The amount of legislation coming through makes it a priority, unfortunately, because it's very, very difficult to keep up with this pace of change. So the high level of focus, if it's not a priority, we won't focus on it in the detail we need to. It's just the semantics at the moment in terms of the amount of change we're going through at the moment.
I think your report last month's council was you're in the process of tracking 25 new pieces of legislation that are at some way, shape or form working their way through the system.
And the other thing is how this fits into the bylaws and policies of council and the workload that's in front of us in that space to make sure it complies to legislation, which is a big piece of work as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think, well, I just on that, I agree. I think that has to stay there. It's such a significant issue at the moment. I'm taking up Jess's prompt about the fairness and equity around the way that we apportion rates. I think that my view is that should be a statement in its own right. It doesn't quite belong under economic prosperity. It's around, so it would sit back up there. And completely agreeing with Phil, just maybe take out the word West Coast and put in other, because we want to affirm our role within LGNZ. It's not just neighbouring councils, it's other like councils. For example, we might work closely with Wairoa because, hey, there's our North Island twin, in lots and lots of ways. So we shouldn't limit ourselves to our own geographical neighbourhood.
Shane.
I just think that we need risk in there, like risk identifying and addressing major risks, because that is something that it should be a priority. Where it can be, like we have our risk register, and so there are some things in that risk register that I think that we need to say, okay, this is something we can address and we should be addressing. There are some risks that we can't just mitigate it, but we need to be able to identify those that we can either mitigate or reduce.
Yeah, I am just wary of not confusing what are standard operational procedures as we currently do them with rates and with risk registers and, risk and audit committee, and
So I
confusing
guess
the
Jess, there were
exercise.
risks brought up at the last risk and audit meeting that I would presume have been built into our long-term plan to address them. And so for me, it should be there because of that reason.
I was more thinking that I think the intent of the priorities was more to say where are some risks and have we prioritized them? And so I wonder whether or not I could just look at the risk register and then say this is where these would talk to it. That might be the better way of doing it.
Yeah,
rather
that's
than-
fine. That's cool.
Oh, sorry, Paul.
It's just, I don't like the words, sustainable regional future in there, particularly as we're looking at an amalgamated coast of which our ratepayers universally do not want to take part of. I don't think it should be appearing in our documents that we are looking for a sustainable regional future. Collaboration in itself has different contexts. And Simon pointed one out that was absolutely valid, that for colleagues between different councils to discuss and educate each other is an excellent form of collaboration. When it comes to infrastructure and resources, no. We're an area that is geographically separate from our nearest other centres, and I believe we are more resilient communities if we are self-sustaining. And it's a bit like, as I've said before, our evacuation policy, where it's basically every man for themselves. Great target. Have everyone look after themselves, be sustainable, and if there comes a major event, then they are free to look after their neighbours. And I see that being the same with local authorities, that if our community doesn't rely or collaborate with resources, infrastructure with other centres, and we are resilient enough to withstand an event, then we are better placed to help our other district councils around us, our neighbours. So I see collaboration in that way as a positive thing, but I don't like to see the words sustainable regional future as though it's a signed deal that we're going to have a regional future.
Dave.
Sorry, you had me on side until you assumed that ratepayers don't want something, and you lost me, Paul. Let's stop speaking on behalf of ratepayers that haven't actually said that to you. And that tells me you're going down into too great a level of detail. At the moment, we have in place a civil defence structure that is West Coast based. Right, that's how it's currently structured.
Or covers the West Coast.
Well, yeah, it covers the West Coast, but we've got controllers and central civil defence people that operate across the West Coast. And that's a structure that we've got. So I don't think we should change our perspective just because of your view on an amalgamated West Coast unitary approach. This civil defence approach has stood us in reasonably good stead, and I would like to see it stay in.
When I say ratepayers are against the amalgamation, it goes back before your time in town when we had the push by the Local Government Commission to force amalgamation. That failed, and it was during the mayor of Gary Howard, and had total unanimous support to turn it down. There was not a councillor against it. The community were against amalgamation. And when I say ratepayers don't want it, I'm referring back to that situation that was thrashed out and to no end then. So
How long ago was that, Paul?
during the mayorship of Gary Howard.
So things have changed since then. So you know what? I just remind you that you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to change and adapt to the environment you find yourself in. And I don't think quoting things that happened years back is a valid argument going forward in the new environment we find ourselves in. So for that reason, I would oppose changing the regional from a civil defence perspective, from a current organisational perspective.
Dave Hawes just said it's about 9 years ago. Is that correct?
About 7, 8 years ago.
7 to 8 years ago. Okay.
So there has been a lot of change.
So that was in Gary's second term.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, do we have a consensus that we want to regionally collaborate with our neighbouring councils? So as per councillor Kernow's suggestion,
Yeah.
West Coast,
It's fine with me, yeah.
I think we've got quite a few notes. I think so I guess my first question is, was there anything else you'd like to either add or did you want to, I didn't hear anything needing to be removed that the group agreed on. So I'm going to suggest that there was a couple of changes that we needed to make. I want to come back about the risk and councillor Kerno, I just want to put a bit of thought into the fairness and equity one.
Yes, I can't.
No, not on the fly. I can't think of anything, but we've got it noted there.
Yeah, sorry, Jess, have you got another microphone up there? Dave's having trouble hearing.
Okay. So I was just going to suggest that if there's nothing others in terms of a theme as in particular that you wanted us to add and nothing to remove, that we've got a few notes here that we could go away, and I might do the same thing where I'll sort of draft up an email, send it around for feedback, and then take it to a council paper for a final decision.
Okay.
One thing I just kind of thought of now, Jess, and it's just come to my mind, like we have groups like the new WEN group who are doing stuff in the community and who might be looking for funding and stuff. Is that just part of business as normal that we don't look at with this? It's just part of community funding, or so we're not looking at, we don't have to have a statement around supporting community groups?
I hadn't specifically got, that's why I'd gone more around economic prosperity as opposed to that level of detail again.
Yeah, okay.
But that was the type of thing around that business growth. That's where I was thinking around that.
Yeah, okay.
For those groups.
Right. So where are we at, Jess?
Well, I mean, that pretty much rounds me off. So if you guys are comfortable with me going away and we can take a paper probably in September through, then that's what I'll get cracking on.
Right, excellent. We've, what's the time now? 3 o'clock. So we've got a workshop starting at 4. Can we bring that
No,
forward?
we'll bring it forward. I'll
Bring that
get the
forward.
team. So I'll message Brent now.
Okay.
So,
Yes, Leslie, thank you very much. Good discussion. Yes. I've sent Linda a text and asked her where she is, but she hasn't responded. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.